Let me say this to every woman and every man listening to me right now, okay? You can be the catalyst for a person's growth. You can even inspire them to change, but you cannot be the reason that they actually do it, because they may feel like you made them do it. That you were the reason for the decision, because it will ultimately feel like control. Now, why do I say that? A lot of time, control leads to resentment. You ever done something for somebody and all of a sudden you did it because they wanted you to do it? You did it because they wanted you to do it, and you really wanted them to believe, hey, yeah, I want to change or whatever. But ultimately, you resented them for doing that. Hey, I'm Coach Ken. And today, we're going to have a grown folk conversation. We're going to talk about something that is near and dear. A lot of times we do things in relationships. We say yes to relationships because somebody else wanted us to. But now we're going to really dive into what happens when you do that. When a person forces you to do that, if you will. I had a clip to go viral. In the clip, I talk about me. It had to be my decision when I married my wife. But what happens when you feel like it's not your decision? It's the other person's decision, but you went along with it. So we're going to talk about that today. So we're going to talk about the difference between influence and control. The difference between influence. Now, let me be clear. Someone else can be your motivating factor, inspire your transformation. Somebody else. Yes, somebody else can spark it. Somebody else can challenge you. Okay? You can challenge somebody else. You can challenge somebody else to be that other person. You can support them. But the moment that it feels like it's not your choice, it becomes control. So let's think about this. Me and my wife, we have the video there on our podcast when I was saying that it had to be my decision when we got married. Now, listen, I waited longer than I tell my clients to do. It had been years we had been together, and I was commitment avoidant. I'm not going to even lie. But I told her one time, I was attempting to decide, and I would tell her it has to be my decision. Now, she didn't understand that at the point, but it was at that point. But it was only when she decided to make her own decision and not try to force me anymore. But she made her decision to create her boundaries. And she was saying, you know what? You made your decision. I'm no longer going to make my decision based on your decision. I'm going to make my decision based on my own happiness, based on my own self-care, based on my own belief that I do come first. I've got to love me more than I love you. And so what I'm going to talk about today in this, I'm going to talk about how that happens, why you do that. So control. A lot of times, if a person makes a decision because you made them do it or they felt you made them do it, control equals resentment. You see, the reason it has to be your decision. You might push him. You might push him to propose, okay? And he does it because he doesn't necessarily want to lose you. You push him to commit. He says yes, just to keep the peace. But years later, guess what shows up? Regret, resistance, and distance. Because the proposal was never his situation. Proposal was never his. It was always yours. And so that's why I teach people, you got to be willing to make decisions. The word decisions comes from the Latin root word meaning to cut off any other option. When you make a decision, when you actually stay in control of your own life. And what I want you to do is, the reason it has to be your decision, because it does not feel safe when someone else is controlling you. So you gotta be in control of you. Now, I want to tell you my story. And my story works kind of like this. I had been dating my wife a long time, much longer than I should have. And every year she would get these wedding books. Every year. And I felt pressured. She didn't say, you got to marry me, but the wedding books and talking to her friends about wedding. And I had made a decision to marry. Yes, we were in a relationship. And yes, I loved her with all my heart. But I felt myself getting anxious. I felt anxiety. Why? Because it was her decision. I felt anxiety because it was no longer mine. I was actually feeling controlled. And I knew that control would lead to resentment one day. And so what I want to do today, I want to teach you not only how to stay in control, not only it's your situation, but now how not to make the other person feel like they're being controlled. Now, what do we do? So here's one. Let me give you 5 ways. Number 1, check your motives. What are your motives? Are you trying to force a future, or are you trying to inspire the future? I know we all have a goal. I know we all want something. But is your motive, I want to do this because I want mom and them to see that I'm married. I want everybody else to know that they're going to marry me, that I have value. So that's number 1, check your motive. Number 2, set boundaries. What are boundaries? You know, people often don't know what the difference between boundaries and standards. Allow me to show you. A boundary is something you do not want, something you do not want to tolerate. Like a boundary. I do not want you to yell at me when we're talking. That is a boundary. I do not want you to spend the night outside. That's a boundary. Because a lot of times people get confused between boundaries and standard. A boundary is something that I don't want. A standard is something that I do want. Allow me to explain. A standard. A standard is something that I want in a relationship. My standard is that we both are gainfully employed. That is what I expect. A standard is when you set the bar and you don't want to go beyond the bar, below the bar. For instance, a standard might be we go to our car and you open my door every time. That is my standard. I don't let the bar go below that bar. And so think of the standard and the boundary like this. A standard is something that I do want in my relationship. A boundary is something that I don't want in my relationship. And so when you're attempting to decide, you're not trying to force a decision on anyone, but you have to be willing to create your own boundaries. Your own boundaries. Most people that I coach, when I talk about boundaries, they don't have a damn clue what a boundary is. And when I explain to them what a boundary is, they're like, yeah, I've been allowing him or her to go against my boundary because I've never set the boundary. All right. And then standard. A standard is something that I've set for myself. And some people call it, some people might say, oh, you bougie. Your standard is somebody that makes X number of dollars, somebody who's family oriented. But the truth is, a standard is what you require in a relationship. All right? Those are the difference. So we talked about boundaries. So the next one is set your standard. Okay? Number 4, give them space. Ooh, that's a tough one. Now listen, space a lot of times allows us to see what it is we truly want. And what I always tell people, if it's real, space won't kill you, but the pressure will. And so what I want you to do is understand this, that when you give a person space, what we do is we begin to contemplate. We begin to contemplate what's important to us. We begin to ruminate over all of the things that we've done that might not serve us, or the things that we have done that do serve us. And so that is the reason why I said give them the space. A lot of people are so afraid of giving space because they say the person might not come back. But if they don't come back, they want the one anyway. The next one is focus on your wholeness. Because when you're whole, you don't need to beg anyone because you decide to choose you. Listen, y'all, the key here, the clue is wholeness. The clue here is, am I needing the other person for me to feel whole? And you have to ask yourself that. And when you are whole, when you feel whole, you know what? All of a sudden, I can have the person in my life, or I don't have the person. I don't have to have the person in my life. But let it be your decision and let it be their decision. That's the only way, y'all, that we know that this thing is real. The only way that you're going to know it's real is that it's their decision to do what works for them. Your decision to do what works for you. As I said before, the word decision in the Latin root word means to cut off any other options. And when the other person cuts off the option and says, I choose you, then you don't have to make them choose anything. I want a partner, not a puppet. You want someone who's all in because they choose to be, because they choose you, not because you're threatening them or not because even they fear losing you, but because they know they don't want to live without you.